Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Erwin, Tennessee Town Hall. My name is Josh Smith, and we are glad you all came out tonight, this evening, for this Town Hall, Helene, a year later. We are very grateful to the organizers of this event tonight, to Six Rivers Media, who thought this up, made the invitations, and their incredible journalists have compiled the questions, which we're going to go through with our panelists. So they've heard the questions before, and we'll see if they read them and they had some time to practice. It is so good to be with you all tonight. And at this point, which I know for some people in this community is somewhat traumatic, as we are at the one-year mark and remembering all that was reality for so long in this community, and remembering all those who were affected and those who we lost. And so we plow through this tonight, not without thought of them and those who are still struggling with grief or struggling just to rebuild, or both. So, in that light, I want to introduce our panelists. This is a rather formal setting. However, we're going to pursue informality and more of a discussion, because I think that's what all of us would prefer. I want to first welcome the mayor of the town of Erwin, Mr. Glenn White, and extend a big thank you to you, Mayor White, for allowing us to use your house tonight. We appreciate it. Also welcome to Mayor Jim Grandy from Washington County, Tennessee. Mayor, thank you. Also from Unicoi County, Jimmy Erwin, the EMA Director. Jimmy, thank you for being here. And Catherine Umrichin, the brand new Carter County EMA Director from Carter County, Tennessee. Welcome to all of you. And Jimmy, I know we hope to have the mayor here tonight, right?
If Garland Brother Ely wanted to be here tonight, he is due to have surgery first thing in the morning, so he is unable to make it. But he regrets not being here, and just keep him in our prayers as he has surgery tomorrow.
So our format will be that I'll go through the questions, and I really do think that if we had all of you answer all the questions, we probably would be here at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I don't think any of you were up for that. So what I thought we could do is jump on the questions and allow you to pipe in as you see fit, and I may direct a question or two to you, and if you don't feel like you're qualified to answer it, you're with friends. You can just pass it off to somebody else. And if it's a question you don't want to answer, just point to someone. That can work as well. Well, we want to first acknowledge that we are talking tonight about recovery efforts tonight. It would be very easy for us to focus on how we got here, right? But I think we have all gotten here together, and our best efforts, I think, would be to really update the public tonight on where we are right now and where you see us moving into the future. So if I start veering off that path, bring it back to the present moment and the months and years to come. Unicoi, Carter, and Washington counties all were affected. You all know this. But they were affected in different ways, and they were affected in some similar ways. I'd love to real quickly from all of you just share some ways in which you think we were in this together, but also maybe where your area, your jurisdiction, met some unique challenges that you were exclusively struggling through right now. Mayor Frank, go ahead and kick us off.
So, two of the counties were impacted by the North Turkey River for the most part. Unicoi County, as it came down there in the gorge, took out one of my favorite bridges, just go up. I've walked across it a lot of times on the Appalachian Trail. And then it flowed from there, forced through the industrial park, and then on through 23.5 miles of Washington County. So I will speak for Unicoi because I know Jimmy County, a lot of unique damage there. In Washington County, the river valley was mostly residential and agricultural. So that was good response. We inherited a lot of tomatoes from upstream. But we lost 119 homes completely. We lost another 92 severely damaged. So plus 200 structures that have been focused on rebuilding over the last 12 months. We had some loss of life, and the farmland was amazingly changed. So the river itself used to be a fairly condensed body of waters that meandered through the county. Today, it's much wider. The river basin is much wider. Obviously, the water is a lot thinner, and the river is completely different. So our impact was, with few exceptions, mostly agriculture, agribusiness, and residential.
Mayor White, how about Erwin?
Well, from the city standpoint, I remember 1977 when that area was flooded, and there wasn't a lot out there, maybe a radio station. And but this time around, of course, our whole industrial park was out there, and it got hit very badly. And of course, the businesses were shut down. Worse than losing the businesses, we're losing the loss of life of our citizens who work there. And so that was very hard for us to deal with, and it's still hard for us to deal with, I'm sure, with the families and with their co-workers. And so we always want to remember that. We can always put back a road and put back a business, but you can't bring back life. And so that was difficult for all of us. But, we, like I said, that road is the biggest issue. It was completely wiped out. And we're doing, as a government, since it's a city road, that's our main concern. And we are moving forward. The National Guard and FEMA and TEMA early on in November and in December, they moved a tremendous amount of debris out. There's still some left. We got news from FEMA just today that they're coming to Erwin. They're going to revisit that look as far as improving the commercial debris. So, we're moving forward with that road. Again, as I told the citizens Monday night, the road's going to be between 10 to $20 million, and our budget is 6.8, so we don't have the funds. But we are seeing some very good signs from FEMA. I think they're going to help us. We do have the immediate funds to start engineering, and like I told the industrial leader here from Polypipe that we fully expect to have that temporary road put back December 31st so they can start their operations. But the biggest thing for us was, for me personally as mayor, was the loss of life. It was terrible. Those people got up that morning, fully expected to go home at night, just like we all did this morning. We got up, we expected to go home at night, and there were many that didn't, and of course it affected their families for the rest of their lives. So we understood that. I was proud of how our county came together with the Erwin City government, the Unicoi County government, and we, Mayor Evelyn and I, we named Jimmy Erwin as basically the director of the recovery. And he don't need me to toot his horn, but he did a remarkable job. We got under his leadership, and hopefully, I believe that we did do some good. And there's still a lot more to be done, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel for our employees out there at the district court.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. You mentioned a road that road is named, for those who don't know, that where the road, the priority to rebuild.
Yes, sir. That's the industrial road.
The industrial road.
Has a name.
The main one in.
Yeah, that's the main one in. That's
South
South Industrial Park Drive, and then we're going to link north and south together.
And FEMA's indicated they're going to get on top of that.
They're coming this week or next week, and so they've been good. FEMA's been good. They just got a process. It's a long process, and so. Last we had heard we were on stage 3 and about 21 stages. So, but we're working on that. But we have secured some funding to where we can get the initial engineering and that can get the temporary road put in where the permanent road's at, put it in by December 31st so our employers can have their land where that temporary road's at right now. And so I think there's a lot at the end of the tunnel.
Jimmy, you and Catherine oversee emergency management in your county, so in the name of moving this discussion along tonight, if you could maybe focus on what's the state of your efforts at this point. I know the emergency has really passed on, but in a lot of ways you are still very much engaged, and how would you describe that at this point?
One thing, echoing everything both the mayor said, today the first coal train traveled south through George. A year ago when it was wiped out, there was no tracks for miles. Today, they cut the ribbon, the first train went up the track, and that's a miracle seeing how much damage was done. CSX has worked hard to get that back to going. The county is working on Chestnut Bridge, which is instrumental in our tourism. Our rafting companies out there, it's our goal to get them back up and going to where they can have a season next year. A lot of people like to come to Unicoi County for recreation, and our goal is to make sure that they have a good season next year. The emergency services in Unicoi County, one thing that we've strived to is to get them, they were very resilient. They were very well trained before. Since the last year, they've become even more trained and took it more personal. So that's one of the positive things that's come out of this is our emergency services in Wood County has greatly took the challenge and through.
Thank you, Jimmy. Catherine, Carter County in emergency management as we speak.
So with Carter County, we are definitely still in the recovery phase when you're dealing with emergency management. We still have a whole area, our Elkville Kobe area has our 2 bridges that are, they just went through, finished engineering and the design. So we're looking to get them started. It's going to take about I suspect about 2 years to get those 2 bridges. Now we do have temporary bridges there, so residents can move around, but you do have to be cautious. 321 has been a work that has been closed off for a long time. There's still work being done on 321, as well as our emergency services are still trying to rebuild in that Elk Mills Kogi area. Carter County, similar to what the mayors had mentioned too, we had a lot of damage with the 2 bridges. We also had another bridge along Hava, then we had the or the Broad Street Bridge. That was opened in the city of Elizabethton this about July 4th for that weekend, which was very exciting because now that traffic flow has changed, and it's the first step to having things become back to normal for our residents. Thankfully, there was no loss of life through this event in Carter County. We were extremely fortunate for that. I think the community was hardest hit was our high school. Hampton High School was completely and has not been able to be open. They suffered a huge loss to that school, but they are going to build back. So there is recovery. We are starting to rebuild. And because we've gotten so far to where we are, and the debris removal was very swift on TEMA's level for our waterways. We were able to actually host a collegiate Bassmasters tournament this weekend. So we are in recovery, we are getting stronger, and we'll get through this.
We've mentioned FEMA, and I'd like to spend some time talking about FEMA and lessons learned, lessons being learned. There was in the former administration in 2024 a distribution of funding through FEMA's BRIC program, or we call it BRIC program, BRIC program, where the current administration made cuts earlier this year. That funding for disaster resilient infrastructure. Have your communities been impacted by the FEMA funding cuts as they relate to that, or is this not something that's impacted you? Mayor Grandy?
The answer to that's no. So that program is designed to fund, to create resilience for future disasters. And as far as I know, no counties in Tennessee are taking advantage of that GRIP program. It's really a good program, and it's disappointing that was a place to start cutting, because the return on it is 1 to 6. Every dollar spent in creating resilience saves $6 after a disaster. So long term, that may not be the best plan. So it was terminated in April by the current administration, and a stay was put on that termination in August by some federal judge. So it's in the courts. It's hard to tell what will go on there, but so far, there's no indication that that hold on funding will impact our mitigation process. And so that's really where we will be going once we get our infrastructure built back, is developing mitigation projects. And we'll talk about probably some of what that looks like a little later on. But we have submitted, I think each county, each EMA has submitted a list of projects for resiliency and mitigation going forward. And really not necessarily just for flood. Our 2011 disaster was tornadoes. Our 2012 disaster was a flood in the river valley. But we're certainly subject to other types of disasters. It seemed like it wasn't too long ago, but actually it was almost a decade ago, we had huge wildfires in Sevier County. And so, and that with our national forest here is certainly something that we pay a lot of attention to, and our EMA people are constantly trained to manage. But creating resilience in terms of warning systems and other things, is something that we hope will be a good aftermath from this Helene disaster.
So that's future preparations. It might be good to help those of us who don't work in the trenches as you all do in trying to rebuild the infrastructure that got taken out. You have project. How does that work? And I'll let you jump in here. Why? How did it? Does FEMA give you the money and then you go out and pay for it, or do you go out and pay for it and then you wait for the money? I think I know the answer to this.
Pay for it, and then they'll reimburse us. Now, our issue with the city of Erwin, we have a $6.8 million budget, and we hired the city government hired a FEMA consultant, and he's been great. But he estimated all of our projects would be right at about $41 million. So of course we can't do that, and so that's been the holdup for us. If we had the money. If we got the go-ahead that they would reimburse us, we'd already have the work done, but we just don't. We just don't have that type of cash. So what they want is for the government to pay it, and then they'll reimburse us. Now, like I already said, we do have some lines of credit, probably about $9 million now that we're going to be able to use until we get that reimbursement. But going back to your question about the brick program, it's not affected us. But again, I would like to tell the polypipe people and our industrial people. And I've already said this, let me say it again. We were told that FEMA was not going to approve the commercial debris, which is your debris on your private property. But they're coming to give it a second look next week. So that's good. So I want to give them, I really appreciate that from FEMA. So hopefully, we can get the funds to remove their commercial debris, which would speed up that process with the road. But going back to your original question, no, they want the government to pay it up first and then reimburse, because that's what I've been told, but we don't have that type of cash.
So you've got X, how many projects would you say there are?
I think the total, they're different. We've got the road, we've got the trail, and then of course we've got the paving where the trucks went, and they've the road work. I think right at Mr. Hilbert had 14 projects that FEMA wants each area broken down into a project. So we have 14 of those.
And you've got money from FEMA for?
We've not got money from any from what FEMA has released $2.8 million to FEMA for the engineering, and it's on phase 3. So that's about, I think, 24 steps, and it's on the 3rd step. So, but we have secured some other areas of funding through local banks and through some state programs, like the HIL Fund, the $5.4 million there. Then we was able to take another 3.9 loan out from the state. Of course, we can't use all of that because that's more than our budget, but it will get us going to where we can get the engineering, and hopefully by the end of the FEMA will release the $2.8 million that they already have from FEMA. So it's just a process. It's just a government process, and we just have to be patient. Now, it's easy for me to say being patient when I have our industrial leaders here and our employees need to go to work, but I think they understand where we're at. And but the biggest thing, as I already said, is putting that temporary permanent road back by December 31st. That's what they told me we could do, and I'm holding to it.
Jimmy, let's talk Unicoi County and number of projects versus how many have gotten started and how much you have money from FEMA for. Don't tell Mayor White if you have a lot of FEMA money, because
county's all the money. We can get it.
It's the same thing. We've not received any money from FEMA. Working with FEMA projects manager, everything has been submitted, all our projects, except for maybe 1 or 2 that we're finishing up on, is in review. Some of them have been sent back to FEMA, but there's multiple steps that each project has to go through, up close to 50 some. So it's kind of it gets bogged up. The same thing, we're working on roads, we're working on bridges, and the initial cost that was spent cleaning up debris in the emergency state. So we've got a lot of projects out there sending FEMA to get reimbursed, but we've not received any money back yet either.
and therefore it's hard to move forward on those projects
Hard to move forward.
without the cash reserves. I think it's probably common across Northeast Tennessee region. Catherine, similar through in Carter County.
Very similar in Carter County. We have 42 projects for Carter County, 26 of them are road projects. And the hardest thing for our residents to understand is where they just want the road put back, just put the road back. The waters came through and they dumped so much debris, it filled up those and the streams and whatnot with rock and sand and whatnot. So it definitely changed the way that our tributaries and streams and rivers flow. However, the Doe's been cleaned out very well, but we can't just put a road back. We have to make sure that we stabilize the banks first, because if you don't have the banks stabilized, the road is just going to wash away again. So what FEMA requires is that you put it back to pre-existing conditions. So as soon as we can get these banks stabilized, we can start working on the roads.
Mayor, let's go to you. Washington County, projects pending, projects funded.
There's a lot. We have 14 projects that are all fairly significant, and some of them have been completed because they were of an emergency nature. With your permission, I'd like just to take a moment and say how grateful we are locally to the state of Tennessee. Because as we pointed out, everybody on the panel pointed out, until today, it was not the first federal dollar that has come into the region. Today, Carter County received $360,000. Congratulations, they're the first county in the region, in the disaster, to receive the dollar. And it came today. I was in a meeting this morning with some team of people. That's what we're doing. So I hope you don't.
You are fine.
But, right, I mean, the biggest issue, Glenn spoke about this very succinctly, that it's a cash flow issue in terms of the work that needs to be done. And none of the local governments have a disaster recovery fund just sitting there waiting to be spent. We don't do that. Maybe we should. And I think, one of the lessons learned going forward is as FEMA begins to restructure and we put more authority at the state, that might be something that has to happen in the future. But today, that's not the case. And so this entire region is faced with roughly $1 billion worth of work that needs to be done. Taking the debris removal, the infrastructure replacement, and everything that's involved. There's a possible way that that's going to be done in our local governments and economy. So the state, initially, the governor authorized and made available $100 million to local governments for three purposes: water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and sewer in a 10-year zero interest loan. So with the anticipation that the funding would come from FEMA to repay that. So that initially put money available for those three purposes. Now there was a lot more to be done. It could be used for roads. We lost a convenience center. Could be used for that. We lost a highway department. Could be used for, so it couldn't be used for everything, but the immediate need was debris, because right after the storm, between the silt, the trees, the vegetative debris, a lot of industrial debris, there were propane tanks all up in the river. We had in Washington County 473 vehicles that were in the river basin. If you could imagine that. So there was plenty to do in terms of cleanup. And so that funding made available some funds to get that process started. On the heels of that, our legislative group in special session authorized $450 million in several different categories to be used for storm recovery. So the state stepped up, knowing that the federal government would come in later, perhaps as these projects are developed and and help us recover the funds, but initially, it was money that don't want to get to work. So, having said that, Washington County, I mentioned that we had the 6 bridges that crossed the river. There were 5 of them that were inoperable on Saturday morning after the storm, and 3 completely destroyed. So 2 of them were state routes, so they were really TDOT projects. You may recall that the Highway 81 bridge, the Taylor Bridge, was the contract was initiated within the first week after the storm, and the road opened in less than 8 months after the flood, which is, the TDOT world is like amazing. So, in the construction world, it's amazing. So, the interstate was broken. It was a lot of work, and we're still, building those. That bridge has been replaced. Bailey's Bridge, which is Route 353, is just beginning to get built. The design is done and just beginning to get built. Forby Bridge is county road, and so that's on us to do. Roughly a $25 million project just in itself. So we have a number of roads out, completely washed away. One, we replaced right away in an emergency basis because there was a community, a little Germany, with about 40-some residents who stayed up in there, didn't have access to their community. We couldn't get emergency vehicles in there, fire or EMS. So that was a super high power, and so right away we just put the money into building that back. We got at least 1 lane open in 8 days. So super proud of our contractors, and TDOT was there standing beside us to help and to agree to support what we were doing. So today we are still, we have 1 road that was completely washed out. It's been rebuilt. We have another one that we just put the bids on this week, and we'll get started in a couple of weeks. And then we have a number of roads that need to be resurfaced, and it's been pointed out where these debris trucks and trucks for rebuilding that are 70,000 pounds apiece were loaded and have just torn up our roads. So we have a number of roads that have been beaten to death and need to be fixed. And so now these projects are being developed through the FEMA process and then moving on to hopefully get rebuilt.
I'm hearing all of you say, though, this is a process of years. Hopefully not, but in some ways, we're talking long-term.
Yes, yeah. But with us, I know that the issue with the industrial park, we feel good that we would call it a temporary permanent road. It will go back where the existing road is, where it's torn up. That will buy us some time. That will buy us some time where those people can go back to work, or industries can go back to work, and then, it could be several years before it's put back pre-flood.
And forgive my ignorance, that's the Riverview Industrial
That's
Park?
South Industrial Road.
South Industrial. There is a Riverview Industrial Park, right?
Well, that's the name.
It's the name of it, that's okay.
But the road is South Industrial.
Gotcha,
And
so,
we're going to connect the south and the north end together.
okay. There's a rail line there,
There is.
and it's been down.
That's the county spur. It's
The
county
rail spur.
The rail spur, that's the county issue, that's Mayor Eagley, but I
So,
think they're.
We've been working on that since day 1 because we know once the industry gets back up and going, they need that rail spur to get supplies in. That bid was released last month. We have a construction meeting Monday at 3 o'clock in the mayor's office on that. That should start within the next 30 days of getting repaired. And the whole, the county owns the spur, even though it's in the city. It was one of the deals back when they built the industrial park. But we have got the contract. RJ Corman is going to be the contractor. And when they come in, they'll put that spur back as it was on September 26th so that the businesses can receive items and materials at the industrial park.
So when would it be fully operational, if you could guess?
It should take no longer than 90 days. We'll know more Monday when we talk to RJ Corman. They said it would be a pretty quick project, but within 90 days after they start, they should be completed on that.
Mayor Grandy alluded to the fact that all of this is happening at a time on a national level when the current administration is talking about really redoing how FEMA works and moving a lot of the control of emergency response from Washington, D.C. to the state capitals. Anybody opposed to that idea based on what you've been through? Anybody really loving that idea? Any thoughts about that?
Well, what I like to say now, with FEMA, FEMA sent our 2.8 million pretty quickly. It's been there since March, and we've not got a penny of it. And I'm sure there's reasons why they have those steps. So hopefully, after this is over, that FEMA will reach out to the local leaders and somehow fix that to where they can move that money quicker. I think 23 steps is just too much, especially when we have people that's out of work and they're needing their roads back and needing their jobs back. So we've had FEMA sent Erwin government 2.8 million in March, and we haven't got a penny of it yet, and it just held up that FEMA. And so that's where I think the issues, and Mayor Grandy can talk more about it, because I've got a consultant that, this mayorship that I have, it's a part-time mayorship, I'm not full-time. So, so our government hired a FEMA consultant, and that's what he told me, that he was pretty well pleased with FEMA. Nothing to be derogatory against FEMA, it's just their process is so long. Maybe after this that we all can maybe brainstorm together to try to maybe if we ever have to go through this again, it'd be somewhat quicker.
And one of the issues has been with this disaster, this is the worst disaster in Tennessee state history. Most inland states never have hurricanes that hit them that cause this much damage and this much cost. So it has been a learning experience for FEMA. We work with FEMA daily, and they've got a lot of steps to go through. And we do know, talking to the leaders of FEMA and our elected officials, they are working on the process to make it easier for the counties to get their money back. But even going throughout history, it's never a quick process when you have a disaster to get your money back. And that's as far back as I've been in emergency management. Other states, it takes a long time to get your money back.
And what I'd like to say, and this isn't a knock on anyone, when the legislature, Mayor Grandy talked about the money from the legislature, which came to the counties, and which was great for the counties, but the cities got nothing. We didn't get a dime from the state legislature. And somehow I talked to our representatives and our state senator. They just told me they forgot about the municipalities. And so where Unicoi County got a good lump sum, we didn't get any. And they told me, well, we thought the county would share it. The county's not going to share it.
Unicoi County got 3.7 from the governor.
And we didn't get any. And so that's why we're stuck. If we got that much, well, we would have been moving a long down the road. But I've been assured that in their next assembly session that they were going to look at the municipalities. So I didn't want people to think that when Mayor Grandy said that the legislature sent money, they did. They sent it to Unicoi County. They didn't send it to Urban City. And there are two governments. There's the Unicoi County government and there's an Urban City government.
Because it was forgotten? That was the
Well, that's what I was
explanation?
told, but they just forgot to add the municipalities to the bill. And so, maybe they just looked at because the county government's the larger government. But of course, we have our own issues with the problems of the flood, and Unicoi County has their own. And so, I'm sure they'll make it right.
Jimmy, did you have a point?
Unicoi County did receive 3.7 from the governor. That was set aside in the county government to offset. We lost about $550,000 in revenue that was coming in for taxes. So instead of having to put another tax burden on the residents of Unicoi County during this time, that money was used to help offset that so that it didn't hurt the residents anymore. And the rest of it's there to use in emergency situations. And some of the money is going to go to pay for the rail spur that has to be fixed because FEMA's not reimbursed us for that yet. So the county's paying for the rail spur to be fixed. And we'll get our money back in 12 months or whenever it comes in.
Captain Carter County?
Well, I just wanted to just jump on a couple things that Jim had said, where it takes time, and this was one of the disasters that hit Tennessee unlike anything else. So there's a little bit of a learning curve that comes with that, with allocating the monies at the state level and through TEMA. But for Carter County, I cannot speak more highly of TEMA and the efforts that they put forward in our waterway debris removal. Our county did not have to lay out any funds for that. TEMA picked up the waterway removal bill for the state and for all the counties that had debris in the water. And I mean, they were hauling for months. I only came into this position in April, and I can tell you, it was like a 3-story building of the pile of debris that they were pulling out of our waterways. And they made it a point to make sure that all the vehicles got out of the waterways as well. I mean, Carter County, we had a camper stuck on an island, and that would have gone down. But they made sure, they worked hard, they worked diligently with the contractor, and they cleaned up our waterways very well.
Let's wrap up our discussion about FEMA and TEMA with Mayor Grandy. Something maybe you have learned about FEMA and TEMA through this that you didn't know a year ago.
Way too much. And I'll say this, so after a year, it's probably not a day goes by that I don't know something new. And this morning is an example of that. For clarity, the money that was made available was $100 million that TEMA put together for debris removal, stormwater, and water usage was made available, yes, to the counties, but it could be a subrecipient of the town. For example, Washington County didn't have any debris removal to deal with because TDOT managed that for us, but we borrowed from that fund a little over $3 million from the town of Jonesboro, because the town of Jonesboro was the purveyor of water in the river valley. So they lost a lot of capacity in their water treatment plant, and a lot of their lines were disrupted. So that money they were able to use to rebuild that infrastructure immediately, and of course we the county are responsible to the state for the repayment of it, but we expect that the town of Jonesboro will apply through FEMA, which they have, and we will get reimbursement that way. And I don't know whether you want to spend much time in details of how this works, but the TEMA has gotten a lot of punches for holding up money. It's really not the case. FEMA money gets obligated, has been pointed out, and so you run a project through a lot of the process at FEMA, and then once it's satisfied that it's a legitimate project and all the cost structures met, they obligate a certain amount of money for a project. Okay. From that point, then it goes back to the state, and then we work through the state process, which is a contract process. And it's not managed by FEMA, it's managed by General Services, which is a contract procurement arm in the state. Now, Glenn is 100% right. It's got 40-some steps to move through. And at any point in there, if one of the steps finds that there's a problem with it, he goes back to step 1. And so to work through all those steps for us was somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks. And then it moves to a different process. The other thing I learned, honestly, I just learned that this morning in a meeting with our team of people and some folks in Carter County, was that even when all of the steps are met and this money that Carter County received, the first money, was actually paid by the state. So the state is the one who pays the local government when all the steps are met, and then applies to the federal government for reimbursement. So if you think about a disaster across this entire region, which may be, well, it will exceed $1 billion, the state has to come up with funds to reimburse the local governments once those projects are satisfied, and then apply to the federal government for reimbursement. It is unbelievably complicated. And you said, hey, is there a better way? It has to be a better way.
And we could talk more about FEMA and TEMA and all the funding mechanisms of it, and we appreciate you all going pretty deep in the weeds on it, even in that amount of time. No, I think many people here are questioning why is it taking so long, and that's helped us to see it more clearly. Another example of how what is happening in Washington is having an impact on us here is with the Unicoi County Hospital, and a lot of questions about what's going to happen with the future of the hospital. Right after the flood, Allen Health stood up an advanced urgent care to meet the immediate needs and ramped up their system-wide response to help meet the needs of the people of Unicoi County. And they've made it very clear there's an ongoing commitment to Unicoi County to the extent they've taken an option on land in the town of Unicoi. But there's so much uncertainty because of the anticipated cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, and many residents in Unicoi County specifically receive their health care benefits through that channel. So that's plunged some uncertainty into that portion of the rebuilding process. I'm curious how you all, and I'll point to the two of you in the middle. I love being in Erwin because you hear it rain. How are you moving forward with the uncertainty as a result of things out of the control of anyone in this region?
Mayor's office and EMA, I'm sure see this too, weekly we speak about different conversations, but they have taken an option on some property, and it was going forth until a great deal come out. So there's been a little hesitation, but just as usually the mayor spoke with Valid, they're still committed to building a hospital back in Unicoi County. They just got some more procedures to go through, and I guess see what some of the cuts are going to be and how it's going to affect. We need a hospital in Unicoi County. Our citizens is a great asset. The hospital we had before it got flooded is something we were very proud of. It was a beautiful hospital, and it was kind of the sparkle for Ballard because it was the newest hospital in their whole fleet. As far as our emergency services, our EMS has had extra burden put on them because there's not a hospital in Unicoi County. So if anyone is injured or seeks medical help, they have to be transported to Johnson City or Elizabeth. But going back, Ballard is talking and communicating with us, and they are still saying they are committed to put the hospital back in.
Here, why do you want to add on that?
Yeah, basically, Erwin City, Erwin's had a hospital for probably 120 years. And so when probably about early in the first of the year, hadn't had a lot of talk with Ballard, and I reached out to Mr. Bailey, who's in the audience. He's the president of our Unicoi County Hospital Board, and he got me in touch with Mr. Eaton, fine fella. Long story short, the city government wanted the hospital to go down here on 2nd Street, where the industrial park, the 14 acres. But it's set between two railroad tracks, and it just wasn't going to work. So that's when they had talked to us, and it was just, like Mr. Deaton said, Mayor, it's just 1.8 miles of the road at the Tinker exit where they want to go. Last week I talked to Mr. Deaton, and like Jimmy said, it's the bill coming out of Washington that was passed with the reimbursements with Medicare, Medicaid, that is looking whether that they can sustain the hospital. They've got the money to build it, but can they sustain it? So Mr. Deaton told me that they're going to do everything they can. What they may start out doing is at first build an emergency room with several beds there. They know that they can sustain that, and then when they work out the legislation where they get the reimbursements back from Medicare and Medicaid, then they would go ahead and build what they had out here on the south end. So I do think Ballard is committed. It's the only car that we have to drive right now. They have the control of the 26 counties, and we're one of them. So that's the card that we have to play, and I'll take them at their word. Mr. Levine and Mr. Deaton says they are committed to building a hospital in Unicoi County. As mayor, I'm going to hold them to it.
Speaking of uncertainty, because of things that are many moving parts, you have residents in your counties, this is I guess a yes or no, who are still waiting to get a damage assessment, or have we moved through that list?
We have to pass that. There
Yeah.
should not be
That's
one
getting
way.
long past.
Long past,
Yeah.
okay, and in turn, so the assessment is public roads, things like that. They're still-
If someone still has some damage or something that they feel they need to communicate with, they can contact the EMA in their county, and we'll put them in touch with who they need to, and help them any way we can.
And we put on that idea, if
There
there's,
have been a lot of long-term recovery groups that have come together from this event that for me in Carter County, if somebody calls saying, I have damage from Helene, we'll go out, we'll take pictures, and we'll refer them to long-term recovery to see what kind of assistance they can get through them. Because right where we are, damage, those assessments were done early on.
imagine the same is true in Washington County, Mayor?
Yeah, and the long-term recovery group is working with individuals, helping them manage cases where they're maybe having an appeal with FEMA. But, you know, I will say that in the meeting Friday before last, the FEMA people reported to us that for individual assistance, this is not roads and public assistance stuff, but for individuals, over $35 million has already been distributed in our region, so that's 6 counties. But that's a lot of money, and, you know, part of it's for housing, part of it's to help people recover and damage houses and begin to replace. You know, that money from FEMA is not designed to put somebody back home, but it is designed to help them get started. And so that's where we are today.
We've talked a lot about government, healthcare, infrastructure. There are people who are in very real ways still trying to figure out how they're going to rebuild. For some, they literally don't have land that they used to own. It's now been washed away, as you mentioned, Catherine, changed by the course of rivers. Are you aware of, have we seen people displaced who aren't planning to come back, or is that something you can even track in terms of the long-term impact on the people who lived in the areas that were flooded, that maybe they're just displaced and they don't plan to return?
I know a lot of Unicoi County, the ones that were displaced, they may have had to move to maybe Johnson City to find lodging or something like that in Unicoi County. But a lot of people that came back. The long-term recovery group, our nonprofits in the county, our churches have teamed up with ASP, a lot of other national groups that have come in and built homes. I don't know the exact number. I know our groups are working in Washington County. It's just, there's no lines when it comes to helping. Everybody's just kind of going back and forth. And 2 or 3 of our churches in Quick County have put a lot of new homes up, put a lot of people under roofs. So if anyone is still out there and they don't have a roof over their head, please reach out to emergency management, reach out to long-term recovery, and let's get them in contact with someone that can help them. There's still resources available for them.
Right, and also I think it needs to be said, if there is a policy that happened, our county secured the Army building, and that's where Jimmy's at, where our emergency command center is there now. And during that time, you had FEMA there also. You had FEMA and people there. So if we have any citizens that still need help, they need to come to the Army, correct?
Yes, come to the emergency management office, and we'll get them pointed in the right direction.
And we go to the Unicoi County Long-Term Recovery Group. That's going real well with Ms. Coyley. Now, with our city, we had the losses in the industrial park, but to my knowledge, we didn't have any homes that were lost within the city, but we had the businesses, and so that's what was our main focus.
Displaced residents in Washington and in Carter, people who you know or are tracking may still be in trouble, but getting by.
Right, so temporary housing provided by FEMA, it's roughly an 18-month deal limit. But we, in Washington County, through our long-term recovery group, have 36 homes that have been built with residents living in them, either rebuilt or built. And we have 71 more under construction. So, I mentioned that there was close to 200 major, either completely lost or seriously damaged as we went into it. We've got a little over 100 that are pretty much in progress going back. People process trauma different. We had folks that the week after the storm were chomping at the bit, wanting to rebuild. They had access to folks who would come help them. They wanted a building permit, which was really challenging for us initially. And then there are people that, after a year, are just beginning to think about, hey, you know, maybe I want to move, but maybe I want to be back where my home was. And so it's been working with our long-term recovery group and a mental health specialist and trying to help people that lost loved ones. I mean, it's been really traumatic for us, and it's been super traumatic for these individuals having to deal with loss. You know, everything they own gone. Some of their family members gone. We still have the suffer that we've not yet brought in, and that weighs heavy on us.
It's one of the missing.
Yes, and it's really hard. It's hard on our emergency management people, it's hard on our first responders. People cost us things differently, and we just have had to, our long-term recovery group has been really good about working with folks at their own pace. And so that's where we are today, and they will be people that work back. We had land, I had a gentleman come to me the very first week after the storm and said, "Mayor, I want to rebuild, but my land's gone. I have no place to rebuild." And I thought, gosh, that doesn't make sense. But there were 6 houses and 6 lots where there was nothing left, and it was just a river. So several of those have, one of our churches bought some property away from the river a little bit, and a couple of those folks went there. We have finally been able to get a little bit of money for the folks who lost their land. He doesn't have a process for repaying people for land loss. They're paying a little bit for their structure, but nothing for their land loss. And we were able, through the foundation, to get some money, so we're going to be able to give these people almost the assessed value of their land back, which is absolutely not. But it took a long time to make that happen. But they still have to figure out a place to live. So whether it's back on the river or someplace else, it's hard to track that. But we're working with these people every single day trying to bring some relief to them and bring some closure of what they lost.
Catherine, anything you want to add on that? Then we have a few minutes left to wrap up.
I would just say that our long-term recovery groups have really stepped up to try to capture that. I know for Carter County, they've interviewed and gone through the process about 212 individuals that have asked for assistance, whether it be help cleaning up, rebuilding homes. They have groups that come in, seasonal groups that will help build, and just trying to get that normalcy back. Because as you said, everybody grieves differently. And it's not just individuals or people losing their houses. I mean, Carter County, we had a fire department lose everything. They watched their truck go right down the river. And they found the chassis with nothing else to it a mile further down. So it's also getting our emergency services to rebuild as well. In areas that will be better resilient to any future floods should or when they happen.
God forbid that would ever happen again, right? And you all mentioned trauma. Just recently, I think there's maybe a hurricane out in the southeast Atlanta, or southeast of us, and someone just said that just simply the mention of it was the return of trauma.
There's 2 of them looking at that.
Yeah, and so we all see that differently because we used to live in a place where hurricanes never really had an impact. We have 6 minutes left before our promised time to end this event, and I'm struggling with thinking about the best way to end. I was thinking, Mayor, you mentioned the good that came out of the horrible and the acquisition of an armory for emergency management. Could we really quickly just go down the line, not trying to make good out of something that was horrific, but have you seen something, as we wrap up, that leads you to go, we've grown, we're better? I'm thankful.
From my perspective, it's the way we saw people come together and help each other. I think of the young man, one of the few businesses that was lost, who lost nearly $1 million worth of manufacturing equipment. And young man, wife, child, and he had no business. He had the shop left. And he was out helping his neighbors put their stuff back together, knocking out their houses, part of groups coming together to try to figure out how to help these people emotionally as they were going through the trauma. And I've seen so many examples of that during the last year, of neighbors coming together. I mean, really from the very first day, first hour of Saturday morning, when we went to Jackson Bridge, people were out with skid steers, people were out with all sorts of rakes, shovels, whatever.
Not waiting for help, they were
Not
jumping
waiting
in.
for help. The highway department was there, and they were all working together to, help each other to get through it. And so, that's the thing that I just remember over the last year, this amazing outpouring of neighbor help.
Here, and you mentioned Erwin, anything else?
Yeah, there's no, basically what I saw was, of course, we lost some very precious people out there in the industrial park. A couple of those people I taught in school, most of them I taught for children in school. And I saw those survivors, how they clung to the faith. And even in tragedy, how they still preached the Lord and went to their faith for help and for healing. Also, I saw how our churches came together and how they bonded and helping people even now, trying to put people back in the homes. And also, I saw how our governments came together. We had two governments, the Unicorn County government, the Erwin City government, we came together. And then also we had, I see Mr. Troy Moore back here, and I thank the Lord of Troy because his love is the North Chucky River. And, to me, he's Grizzly Adams. I really, and I saw his determination to fight for the North Chucky River, to make sure that we can reclaim what we had in our tourism industry and hopefully even better. But it just brought us together. And when you go through a crisis like this as a governmental leader, you make mistakes, and then you learn from those mistakes, and then you do some good things, and it's called setting a precedent or an example. So hopefully we'll never go through this again, but if we do, I'm sure Mayor Andy and Jim and EMS director from Carter County know that we've learned a little bit from this. We've learned a lot, and hopefully we won't have to put our experience together or use our experience again. But basically to sum it up is that how our people in a crisis that they turn to the Lord and they ask for His guidance and His help and His Holy Spirit to give them comfort. And I saw those people with comfort, and even the students that lost parents in my classroom, they were still there and they were living. I lost my father when I was 56 years old, and it killed me. But I couldn't imagine losing my father when I was 16 years old. And I had one young man that did, and he was there every day and was a productive student, was productive and solid, and I admired that.
A lot of resilience.
Yes.
One with the two of you, anything good that came out of this?
What they said, the community sport, coming together, our churches, our neighbors helping neighbors, and people from all across the United States. We had people bring things starting day one to Commercial Operations Center, to our churches, just coming from everywhere. We had a lady whose husband had passed away in Knoxville a month later, and she had her daughter bring her up here to bring some tools that her husband had. She wanted to go to somebody that could use them to help rebuild their house. So it touched hearts all across the United States that came to our community in East Tennessee to help us rebuild and get back to some normalcy. And we appreciate everyone for that.
Story after story of that. Catherine?
I think from what I've been told is just everybody came together. There was a sense of community. We're all in the same boat. We're either going to sink or we're going to rise from it. With my experience with emergency management, you have to be prepared for anything that comes your way. And I think this definitely was a good unfortunately, it made a lot of eyes open up on how they need to, a person needs to be prepared better for any kind of death. Because if you fail to prepare, you can prepare to fail.
We could talk for another 2-3 hours. You mentioned the Millichucky. That's a whole other subject that I wish we had time to get into, but we are wanting to be respectful of all of your time. It is 7:30. I want to say a big thank you to our panel tonight, to Jimmy Erwin, the Unicoi County EMA Director, to Catherine Umrichin, the Carter County EMA Director, to Mayor Joe Grandy, the County Mayor in Washington County, and a big thank you to Glenn White and all the staff here at Town Erwin for allowing us to use this facility. I want to especially thank Six Rivers Media for having the idea to organize this event tonight and for allowing me to take part. It's an honor. You will be able to see coverage of this in the Johnson City Press, johnsоncitypress.com, and the Erwin Record, erwinrecord.net. And this video, I'm told, of this event, if you want to share it, will be posted with others who are watching very closely to see how we can rebuild as a community 1 year later. I know I say this to all of you, our thoughts to all of you who are grieving tonight and who are hurting and who are so painfully aware of what you've lost. And we will always keep you in our prayers. And if you have questions, listen, it's been a long day for you all already, and you agreed to do this tonight as a service to the public. But I know if you have any questions you want to follow up, you wouldn't mind some brief conversations afterwards, and then we'll let them get home and get to bed. Maybe have some supper. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.